All right. Good afternoon. We're very pleased to have with us today Philippe Lazzarini, the Commissioner-General of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, known as UNRWA. I believe he has been briefing the Fourth Committee, and he is now here to talk to you. Mr. Lazzarini, welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Farhan, and again, a pleasure to be with you today. In fact, we had a briefing not very long ago, so I'm not sure I have much more to add. As you say, Farhan was briefing the Fourth Committee this morning, and I know that the statement is available for all of you. It's already out. But maybe there is one point I would like to stress on today. It's a different kind of disinformation related to UNRWA. I think we raised a lot the question of the disinformation and the attack, political attack on the agency. But I have noticed over the last few weeks that there is a perception that the agency is not operational in Gaza or in the West Bank. And we even heard today at the Fourth Committee the representative of Israel saying that UNRWA has been fully replaced and other agencies have stepped in. And I think it's important that we correct this perception. It is true that there is today two bills adopted by the Knesset. You are all very well aware, which started to be implemented as from the end of January. The impact was on the operational presence in East Jerusalem, primarily our schools. And the second impact has been that we had to withdraw our international staff both from the West Bank and Gaza. But in reality, we are extraordinarily operational. In Gaza, we still have 12,000 staff. They are primarily involved in providing, focusing in public health and in education. They have never ever stopped providing life-saving assistance to the population. And since the ceasefire is in place, they have scaled up their activities across the Gaza Strip. Just to give you a few examples, I shared also examples this morning at the Fourth Committee, but we have currently about 75,000 people who are sheltered in 100 of our premises across the Gaza Strip. We have, over the last 2 years, provided more than 15 million primary health consultation. Today, the average is about 14,000 a day. We have just started with UNICEF and WHO again a vaccination campaign, and I keep saying, these are good examples of a partnership on the ground. We have UNICEF bringing the supply, the vaccine. We have WHO in charge of the cold chain, but the nurses, the staff providing to the children the vaccine are all health staff from UNRWA. We are also very much involved in ensuring access to clean water. I would say today about 40% of the clean water is thanks to the work of our engineer on the ground. And then we have also the education. You heard me many times on how important I believe education is in this kind of environment and why we have to make it our collective priority. Our colleagues on the ground have already started to bring back in-person learning environment 40,000 children. We are aiming at bringing 100,000 children in a one-on-one learning environment before the end of the year. And in parallel, we are also providing online online learning and education to about 300,000 children. I believe that this is important to avoid the risk to completely lose an entire generation. Anyway, it's a race against the clock, because we are very close to that. And if we lose an entire generation, and if the rubble and the trauma becomes the new learning environment, there is indeed a risk that these children in the future be exploited and join armed groups or be radicalized. I think it's also important to remind that in the West Bank we are also very active. Our schools are open. We have about 50,000 children in our schools. By the way, the number of children has increased. We registered an increase of more than 4,000 kids coming from the PA schools back to the UNRWA schools. And when it comes to primary health, we have also provided into 2025 more than 700,000 health consultations. And we have been also very active at the time of the military incursion in North-West Bank, Jenin, Tulkarem, and so on, to provide emergency assistance to the displaced family. So here are just some examples of what the agency does, but all this to say that with 12,000 staff in Gaza, 4 to 5 in the West Bank. In the West Bank, we are the second biggest employer of a civil servant, and in Gaza we are the main employer. So we remain, despite contrary to what it's being conveyed, the main agency. I had the chance also this week to issue an opinion paper about what I believe the role of the agency should be in the future. I do believe that we are and remain an extraordinary asset at the disposal of the international community, especially when it comes to ensuring critical services for the population in Gaza, and hence through this to make any effort towards early recovery or stabilization a success. And if you get rid of such expertise, such workforce with an organization having very strong trust from the community, you can only weaken, in fact, any effort trying to promote stabilization. So basically, that's what, it's a very simple message I wanted today to convey about let's do absolutely no mistake, the agency against all odds, despite all the pressure it has been under, continue to be highly operational. Farhan, back to you.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll now open up the floor for questions. Ibtisam.
Thank you. My name is Ibtisam Azim, Al-Arab Al-Jadid newspaper. I have two questions. In your remarks today, you talked about accountability. Remarks to the fourth committee, you talked about accountability regarding UNRWA staff and also your facilities. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? How would accountability look like for you? And then also on the issue of the role that UNRWA could play when it comes to implementing the New York Declaration and the Trump plan, and whether you are in contact with any Americans here in the UN or in Washington.
Thank you. I mentioned this morning, but I mentioned many times about the need of accountability. I think we have seen that The UN has been blatantly disregarded during the last 2 years. By any account, you look at the number of humanitarian workers or UNRWA workers who have been killed, the number of premises which have been damaged or completely destroyed. They have been also been used for military purposes during the last 2 years. So yes, we need accountability. Now, over the last 2 years, it was very difficult, to assess and to be on the ground and to do fact-finding. I'm not saying that the conditions are fully met today, but this is something we have to keep in our radar. We need accountability when it comes to the UN, on the which form. There are various instruments. The starting point could be at least a type of a board of inquiry. That's what happened already in the past. But this is more a kind of administrative type of inquiry. And more broadly, I think, if we want to promote any lasting peace, I don't believe that we will succeed if we are not going through a delivery of justice and healing. And we need at one point to find ways to recognize the scope of the atrocities which have been committed. So my answer this morning was that indeed we need to define the best shape of accountability. One is related to UNRWA and to the United Nations, for which I don't know yet what the answer would be, but most likely we might wish to start with a board of inquiry. Now, when it comes to the New York Declaration or the 20-point plan of President Trump, I believe that an agency like ours can deliver in the primary expectation that the community and the population will have. Today, of course, everything is a priority. But we, as a service-oriented, focused agency, we can deliver our share when it comes to the broader public health and the education. And if you cannot ensure a minimum of public health, and public health is not just consultation in primary health center, but it's also waste management, some municipal services, access to clean water, preventing communicable disease, and so on. That's a focus where we, as civil servant-like expertise or workers that we have, can deliver our share. And the second one is definitely education. Later on, and this was also a question being asked this morning, is what role can the agency play in building up future capacity of a Palestinian institution? And I do believe that in our area of focus, the agency indeed has to work hand in hand with our PA counterpart to make sure that we are building up, in fact, this capacity in the future. And that would be our contribution, in fact, to any efforts of stabilization. That's we are in touch with CMCC, the operational coordination body, which has now been in place.
Farnoosh?
Thank you. Farnoosh Amiri with the Associated Press. My question is also related to Ibtisam's. The Secretary of State of the U.S. has said that UNRWA will play no role in the future of delivering aid in Gaza as part of President Donald Trump's plan. Given what you just said, it doesn't seem like that is what UNRWA is doing right now. You said you're mostly focused on education and public health. Has any of your work been impacted or impeded by the last few weeks when the ceasefire took place and that the CMCC is now operating around the borders?
Since the ceasefire is in place, we have expanded our services scaled up our services. Now, it is true that the agency continue to be constrained when it comes to bring in supply, when it comes to bringing in food. But I keep reminding colleagues, an humanitarian response is not just food distribution. If you want to address even the hunger and the despair in Gaza, it's not just through food distribution. It's a comprehensive response, and as an agency, we can focus on services. Services being, again, primary health care, being waste management, psychosocial support, access to clean water, some municipal services where we might repair pumps and canalization on the ground. So these are the kind of activities the agency is primarily focusing on. We do some food distribution with partner, mainly in the shelter that we are managing because, as I said, we have 75,000 people in our premises so far. So that's really the focus the agency is having now. Obviously, we are also looking at on how can we bring our supply into Gaza. You heard me last time when I was highlighting that we have the equivalent of about 6,000 trucks in Egypt and in Jordan. This is not yet in, and we are looking at with the other partner of the UN and also with the CMC, how this can be brought in. It is, again, when it comes to the movement into Gaza for the agency, we are under a number of restrictions, as you know, which are very much related to the piece of legislation in place in Israel.
Deji?
Hi, Mr. Lazzarini. Shudaj with China Central Television. I have two questions. We know there's a funding issue of UNRWA. You just mentioned you're the largest employer in Gaza. You have 12,000 local staff there. How did you pay them, or do they receive salary from UNRWA? That's the first question. And secondly, we know the difference between last time here and this time is there's a major ceasefire. After the ceasefire, you just mentioned you have scaled up operations, but for UNRWA particularly, what would be currently the challenges still facing? And is there any positive change in the relationship between UNRWA and the Israeli Authority? Thank you.
Short answer on the salary, yes, they are still paid. As you know, it's very unsettling in UNRWA because we are constantly on the edge of the cliff of a financial implosion. Basically, we run week by week, month by month. I know that as of today, we will be able to process our salaries in November, but I have no idea or no visibility if we will be able to process our salary in December. This morning, I highlighted the fact that our shortfall between now and the end of the first quarter is $200 million. Previous year, when we reached December, we say, well, we just have to bridge December, and in January we will have the new contribution of the new year. But this contribution at the beginning of the year used to be the U.S. contribution that we don't have. So we will not have the big influx of money at the beginning of January 26, and this is the reason why I'm stressing, highlighting the gap between now and the end of the first quarter, because we know that after the first quarter, many of our traditional donors will start to process their contribution of 2026. But so far, the salaries in Gaza and elsewhere across the region have been processed. You also heard me that we have put in place a number of drastic cost control measures across the agency, which has allowed the agency to, I would say, to save. It's not necessarily to save, but to prevent the spending of an additional 150 million US dollar. The second question was on, sorry.
With the ceasefire, what is the major
Yeah, I mean,
challenges and the relationship between UNRWA and
The-
Israeli Authority?
you know, the main challenges, and this has been my key ask, is we need to safeguard the operational space of the agency in Gaza. That's challenge number one, to acknowledge that the agency is a vital, key partner, an invaluable asset for the international community to make to help to consolidate the ceasefire and to be part of a successful recovery. I think that common understanding is absolutely key. Then we need obviously to find ways to bring back our supply, either through partners or directly through UNRWA, but at least the supply has to come in. And I would say in an ideal world to bring back the international staff, which is not yet back in Gaza. Now, do I have indication we will go there? No, I don't have any indication for the time being, but this should be the aim of the agency now.
Frank.
Frank Uziardo, TRT World. Thank you for doing this press conference. I want to do a little bit of a reality check here. How long have you been doing your job presently?
My job?
Yes. How long have you been in your position?
I had 2 mandates. I'm ending in March, so it will be 6 years.
Okay. So going back to the beginning and coming up to the present situation right now, what makes you think that the Israelis are going to hold up their end of the bargain in the ceasefire? What makes you think they're going to really cooperate in the long run here?
The first thing is there is no bill which prevents the agency to operate in the occupied Palestinian territory. You have one bill talking about East Jerusalem because it talks about the sovereign territory of the State of Israel, and the State of Israel consider East Jerusalem as being part of the sovereign state. The second bill is to prevent official relation between the UNRWA management and the Israeli authorities. And as a consequence, we have international staff whose visa have not been processed because you cannot have this relation. But it does not prevent our staff in the West Bank to run schools and to run health centers. They are active. We are on a daily contact with the COGAT when it comes to the West Bank. And then when it comes to Gaza, our 12,000 staff anyway are part of the community. They are nurses, doctors, teachers, and these nurses, doctors, teachers, being with the community, will continue to act as nurses, teachers, engineers, or else. So that's a reality. Even if I am not authorized to cross, even if I cannot send a truck with food, they will continue to provide these services to the population.
Based on what you said earlier about you wanted to correct misinformation or disinformation being put out by the Israelis, isn't that kind of an indication that they're not going to cooperate on a lot of other fronts with regards to your agency and access and cooperation down the line?
It might be an indication of a lack of cooperation, but first we will see in the coming days, a week, a possible adoption of a resolution of the Security Council. It will need to be operationalized. At a given point, you will also have the opening of the crossing of Rafah. So there can be different ways to address some of the constraints we are confronted with. When we talk about coordination mechanism now to enter, in the future, or at least for some time, you will have the CMCC. So we have to look at all these pieces being put in place But ultimately, the message here is we need to keep this space to make sure that those who have the expertise, the manpower, and the community trust be able to provide the services that anyone wants to see to be delivered to the population. And my point before was to say there is a build-up perception that we are not active at all, and the reality is far from being the case.
Thank you.
Islam?
Thank you, Mr. Lazzarini. Islam Doğru from Anadolu Agency. At the fourth committee, you warned today UNRWA may not sustain operations beyond early 2026. If new funding doesn't materialize, what critical services or regions may be the first to face shutdowns?
You know, we have the mandate by the General Assembly to provide critical services to any Palestinian refugee across the region, being in Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. So it's not up to the agency to say we will shut down Lebanon or Syria or Jordan or West Bank or Gaza. If we are in a situation where we have no resource anymore, we might have to go back to the GA and ask, what do you want us to prioritize ultimately? As an agency, we have done everything possible to put in place efficiency measure, cost control, which has become austerity, which is even now impacting sometimes the quality of the services. I don't think we can go much further. Now, I still believe that what the agency is asking for and the shortfall we are confronted with is addressable. If I listen all the statement of the member states, so now we are also, on the eve of a mandate renewal. My call is don't just rubber stamp the renewal of the mandate, but make sure that it is accompanied by genuine, support, commitment, and resource to make sure that the agency be in a position to fulfill the mandate. So we have been in this unsettling situation now for some time. Against all the odds, we have succeeded to navigate, but I think it's time now to become a predictable partner for the foreseeable future, and especially now in this journey, which I hope will lead to a consolidated ceasefire, to recovery, to stabilization, and to the next phase.
Bissam?
Thank you, Mr. Lazzarini, for all the work you do. I'm Mona with Al-Quds Al-Arabi. My question is regarding children's education. After 3 years of no access to education, children in Gaza are still deprived of the right to education. We already know that UNRWA provided about 300,000 psychosocial sessions and nearly 42,000 learning activities in temporary spaces, but unfortunately the trauma and the hunger persist. So my question is, how is UNRWA planning to integrate psychological recovery and nutrition support in its education response to ensure that children in Gaza are not only returning to classrooms, but they are ready and able to truly learn? And thank you.
Yes, thank you. It will take time. It will be a long process. I don't think we can pretend that the children in Gaza are back in a full traditional type of education. As you indicate, they have gone through 2 years of extraordinary duress, trauma, which needs to be addressed. On top of that, we do not really have many schools, of functioning schools. So we are just bringing them in type of a temporary environment, learning environment. The first objective is to try to provide them with some, feeling of normality. The teaching, of course, is still modest. We try to keep, literacy and ability to do arithmetic. But going back to the full curriculum will take some more time. As you said, we have the issue also of the trauma, how to address it, and it's not just the children. The entire population is traumatized. The teachers are traumatized, and we have also to look at how we can support the teacher to better support the children. But we will have a gradual approach. I think what's important is to show that we prioritize education. I said many times, education is the only thing which has never been taken away from the Palestinian. A lot has been taken away from the Palestinian, but not education. The education has remained the pride of the Palestinian, and we have to make sure that we restore this as a matter of priority.
Okay, Islam again.
Thank you again. You also mentioned at the committee that ICJ ruling on Israel obligation to lift restrictions on UNRWA's work. Given Israel's continued measure against the agency, what mechanism or pressure can actually ensure that compliance?
Well, you know that this is advisory opinion. It's non-binding since it's an opinion, but it will become a legal reference. I hope that it will be a legal reference for a number of member states who would expect after that compliance. I don't expect that the state of Israel all of a sudden say we will abide to the ruling of the ICJ advisory opinion, but it will become the norm of many countries, friends of Israel, who will also use this as an argument to make sure that an agency like UNRWA be considered, and not only be considered, is part of the UN and the international community response to the Palestinian in the occupied territories. There have been few rulings from the ICJ. A year ago, the ruling saying that occupation is illegal and should end, and now we have this new ruling calling, in fact, for the full access of the UN, mainly UNRWA, to the population.
I don't see any questions online. If there are no questions online, then I believe we're done with questions, and I would like
Perfect.
once more to thank our guest, Philippe Lazzarini, the Commissioner-General of UNRWA. Thanks again very much.
Okay.
Thanks. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.